I'm so glad to have you here today, and I hope that you're going to enjoy your day and have already as you wander through and just listen to many of our professors speak. But I'm going to focus my attention predominantly on computer science in this presentation, but I'll talk a little bit also about math and pre-med studies and those kinds of things because we play a strong role in moving our students in those areas as well. So the main theme of my presentation today is to help you understand this chart. And what this chart is really trying to say is, if you want an amazing career, and if you want an amazing job, and you want to compete at the highest level for the best opportunities when you graduate from college, is you have to have great things on your resume. And you have to show the people who are interviewing you that you have done amazing things while you've been in college. Because 10,000 people can go for an interview and say they've studied C++ and data structures and did some calculus. And that's not what you want on your resume. What you want on your resume is, hey, I did the World War II German encryption system in assembly language when I was a second semester freshman. And everybody's going to go like this. And I'm going to tell you, it's very difficult to do that. But if you do that, then I can personally help you do that. If you wanted to go to the National Security Agency as an intern, at the end of your sophomore year and have them pay you $35,000 during the summer, I can tell you how to do that. I've seen many of my students do that. And the answer is you do great projects while you're a freshman and sophomore. And of course, you have to have great grades. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So the thing I want to first emphasize is that Lawrence Tech is just not an ordinary university. Lawrence Tech is a university that's focused on project-based education. And very simply, what that means is, hey, learning C++ is great, and everybody does that in the universe. But what we want you to do is actually, while you're learning a topic like C++ or something else, you're actually implementing it in real-world projects and doing complex things. In other words, it's by creating things that your skill goes up an order of magnitude, and your learning goes up by an order of magnitude, because it's very, very difficult to create robotics and switching systems, commerce systems, et cetera, encryption systems. Those are very difficult things to develop, even if you're a professional. And so in college, when you're challenged to develop those things, your learning goes up tremendously. And I have some great stories that I'll share with you of my students. So what we want you to be doing is developing very complex games, for example, while you're an undergraduate, if you're interested in gaming, because, in fact, games are the most complicated software that you're going to take on. If you're interested in security, it's great to do encryption systems. They're very complex and very challenging. On the other hand, if you're interested in ecology and environmental and medical type of arena, then it's very important to do those things while you're in college. So I've had students work with Mass General Hospital on EMR systems. I've had complex games done by my students. I've had complex encryption systems by my students. And I'm also going to show you amazing things that the faculty here do. One of the amazing things about LTU is that we have amazing faculty, and they're interested in helping undergraduates be great. So they don't talk too much about what they do. They talk a lot about what their students do. So this particular student, young woman, was interested in art. And she wanted to combine art and computer science, and she wanted to ask herself the question, is it possible to do computational analysis of artwork to try to understand when it was painted, what family of art it is in, and whether it's actually done by the artist himself as versus a forgery. So she did a lot of computational work, ended up with a very nice result that appeared in a top peer-reviewed journal, and she actually was able to characterize art by the family of the arts, by the artist, group them all together, as you see, either by the type of art, whether it was a Renaissance art or something else, and she could actually identify when something might be an outlier. The same thing happened in astronomy. One of our students was interested in astronomy, and one of the challenges in astronomy is that there are major telescopes around the world are snapping pictures of galaxies all day long and all night long, and they got data now for about 15 billion of them. So they spread those 15 billion pictures out for about 100 astronomers around the world, and they never get anything done, right? It's very difficult to just look at pictures one at a time. So one of our students decided to apply some computational analysis and morphological analysis of galaxies and scanned about 15 billion galaxies and gave these 50 or so to the astronomical community. So you need to look at these. These are very unusual. These are real outliers. And of course, that work got published also in a top journal. And what was interesting about this is this results in the largest telescope in the world called the LSST, which is down in South Africa, is giving the school 6 hours of time on that telescope. That's amazing if you think of all the astronomers in the world, and we're not an astronomy department. So somebody was interested in biometrics and wanted to look if there was other kinds of things that could be done relative to identifying who you are in a unique way. And so this particular student found out that knees, looking at MRI images of knees, is unique. This was one of the ones that a lot of us love the most. This was one of our young women who was interested in the environment and ecology and was interested in whales. And so there's about 15,000 hours of whale noise that's been recorded. I call it noise because that's what it is to me. But it's actually whales talking to one another. Unfortunately, I don't understand whale language. And she wanted to know what she could learn about that speech. And what she found out was that, in fact, by doing some, again, big data analysis, she found out that she could, in fact, characterize the different dialects that whales speak. And what she found out, of course, was that within a single family of whales, how they talk to one another has what I would call an accent. So whales in the northern region speak slightly differently than whales in the southern region, and pilot whales in particular. So it's a little bit like the difference between going to New York and then going down to Alabama. If you've ever done that, you know that if you're from New York, neither of you can understand one another. So, and I'm from Chicago, so those of you who have detected my accent have already learned that I'm from Chicago. This was a young woman who was interested in conservation, and she wanted to know why some nesting boxes never get used, and other nesting boxes get used heavily by the same species of bird. And so she took satellite images and did also some analysis and published her results in a journal. You don't have to publish here to get out of here, but what it's an indication of is the kind of work that you can do at LTU. Because we have small classes, you're not going to come into a freshman class and have 150 other people learning C++. You're not going to come into a class and never talk to the professor because he's a graduate professor who mostly needs to spend time raising money and doing his graduate research. Even though our professors are very leading researchers and publishers, they are interested in students, and so they like to teach small classes of about 20, so that our students, our undergraduates, actually get to interact with them. And I like to teach myself. I don't teach a lot, but I love teaching freshmen. It's my favorite class to teach. So I'm teaching a C class of first semester freshmen, and I'm teaching them how the basic language in about 60 days at a very fast pace, extremely fast pace, so they get the complex topics under their belt very early, and then they can spend the last 6 weeks of the class doing the World War II German encryption system in C. What I know is that those who do that and keep a good grade point average have an amazing thing to put on their resume 2 or 3 years later when they're really looking for opportunities. This is another area. A lot of us have become interested here in medical research. I used to be a lot in gaming. I've gotten a lot of gaming grants, a lot of publications that speak a lot about complex game development. But I've switched over the last several years to the medical area. This is a large research team in Harvard that I guess is mine, I guess you could say, of doctors and engineers working on probably one of the most unsolved problems in healthcare, and that's the fall of the elderly. The elderly fall all the time because, of course, they have to be alone a lot. So they fall out of wheelchairs, they fall out of beds, and they fall when they're walking. So about 2 or 3 million elderly in Europe and America end up in emergency rooms every year, and 40% of them never go home after that. And 40% of those actually die within 12 months. So it's one of the most serious unsolved problems in healthcare. We think we are at the cusp of having a solution. We're just going into clinical trial. We started with a wheelchair where we watch, just to help you understand why computer science is important, we watch people in a wheelchair and we gather lots of information about them. We gather information about how they move. We gather information about their medical history. Gather information about the time of day. We'd like to know when the last time a nurse came to take them to the bathroom. And out of that, we predict by watching them when they're likely to get out of a wheelchair on their own, and we send a notification anywhere in the world to tell people about that, but usually we only have to send it down the hall and around the corner. But we could tell anybody of it. If you're working on Wall Street, we could tell you that. So we think we got an answer. We have a lot of medical doctors now and a lot of engineers working on the team, but it's a startup, and so we could be out of business in 3 months. So always have to keep that in mind. Having a good idea and a good product isn't the same as success in the business arena. So we'll have to see what happens. But we have a real passion, especially me. I have a real passion for the elderly. And they have changed my life. And so this is payback time, I hope, that I can really do something valuable for especially elderly women who are in nursing homes. So we compete in a lot of international competitions. We compete in lots of competitions sponsored by the leading defense contracting agencies. This is DARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Group of the US government. We also can compete a lot in autonomous navigation systems and intelligent control of vehicles. And our students usually place very near the top, often in first place. We just sent several teams to Russia to compete in a worldwide robotics competition as well. This got press. A lot of our work of our students gets press in, Scientific America and Huffington Post and blah, blah, blah. This got all kinds of press in the news. Is that one of our students analyzed the music of the Beatles and using some computational analysis could actually characterize every song that the Beatles made, every album that they released. And one of the things that they discovered, of course, is that when the Beatles albums were released, that wasn't when the Beatles albums were made. So she found out that, in fact, some of the earlier albums were actually released later and vice versa. Very interesting. Got a lot of worldwide press. This is one of my favorite projects. This is the German encryption system. This is actually done by sophomores. It's done in assembly language. Assembly language is the language of computer science that really works down at the hardware level. And so this language is converted into these ones and zeros immediately. That's sort of what assembly language is all about. So people like myself who work in assembly language can read all the ones and zeros just as easy as we can read this. Would you like to take a half hour and have me read that for you? No, we won't do that. So. But it's a great project, very impressive on a resume when you say that you did that as a freshman or a sophomore. Mine are freshmen, so they're not doing it in assembly language, but just one level above this called C. I used to be a lot in gaming, not anymore, but these were done by some of my students. And the thing about games is it's so complex that if you really do these things of this quality, you get great jobs. So students here and here went to electronic arts, which is like getting a job that 10,000 people compete for every opening. Very difficult to get even an interview, let alone get a job there. But to develop your own game engine and your game software, and this is not done with tools. It's not done with game development tools. It's all done with hardcore C++. So it's all, you got to sort of invent everything. This particular student one of these went to electronic arts, but the other ended up being in the medical arena. And he's actually on my research team in Harvard. He was the very first person I recruited after me and one of my professors actually started this research group about 3 years ago. The story I'd like to tell about this student is his name is Peter. And I want you to understand the power of project-based education. Peter came to college and lasted 1 day. He was a mediocre student in high school, had no idea why he would go to college, and so when he went, he walked out. And he worked at Walgreens for about 2.5 years. Now, Walgreens is a wonderful company, and I remember going there when I was a little boy in Chicago. So I have good feelings about Walgreens. So don't take what I'm going to tell you wrong. After 2.5 years, he woke up one morning and said, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. I don't want to work for $7.50, 60 hours a week at Walgreens. I better figure out what else I'm going to do. And so he decided that he would come back to college. I happened to be the wonderful recipient of that epiphany that he had. Because when he came to college, he was now ready. And so he was in my freshman class, and he did an amazing piece of work with a couple of other students for me in my freshman year. And then he went on to do this in his sophomore year. And then he eventually, in his junior year, went on to do some medical projects for me, and then got great work at one of the major hospitals in Boston, and now has had an amazing career doing medical systems development. And it turns out that the medical director of that hospital that he's at currently is now the medical director on our research team. So it's a small world how things happen. This was the project he did as a freshman. It's a commercially releasable casino system. You could launch this on 50 video systems in Las Vegas, go up and play any of the 3 or 4 games. It would take complete track of every bet that you made, and it would send it to the network control center, keep track of all your money, how much you lost, blah, blah, blah. This network control center could be in Chicago, could be in Paris, could have been anywhere in the world, controlling the casino floor. And if they detected you were winning too much, you could push a button and shut your machine down and send you a message to tell you that the machine broke. When you do that at 19 years old, it changes your life. Because what it does, when you do these kinds of things young, especially when you think it's impossible, and when the professor tells you that you're going to do this kind of stuff, you want to run home and get out of the place as soon as you possibly can, because it sounds impossible. But when you do it and you're done, then you know you can do anything. And it's nice to know that you can do anything at 19 years old, because then you go on and you do lots of things. So at the end of the day, this is what it's all about for me. I spent 25 years in the industry. I'm not going to give you details of my resume and bore myself. You know, telling you that I'm a Nobel laureate, you know, would inflate my ego, and you might be impressed by that, but I'm not going to tell you that because I am not a Nobel laureate, by the way, so just to set the record straight. But what I do love is I love to have my students go to the best place and impress their employers to an amazing degree. And that's what happens when you come to a place like LTU. Because we're real-world project focused and not theoretically focused, you know that you can do stuff. It's great to be able to learn stuff and then take an exam. I don't want to deny that, but that's not necessarily mean you can do something. So we do things. The other thing that's important at a school like LTU is it's student-focused, not faculty-focused. You've noticed that I have not spent one moment telling you about the resumes of my faculty. Not one moment. Not that they don't have them, because the faculty here are internationally recognized, have great grants, lots of publications, and it's because of them that our students can do amazing things. But I haven't talked about them. What we are concerned about, and my great faculty are concerned about, is that we're student-focused at the undergraduate level. At graduate schools, like University of Michigan, which is a wonderful place to go if you like football, or used to like football, but you don't get attention from the faculty because they're too busy having to work with their grad students. So normally the undergrads are actually taught by teaching assistants who take over after a professor might have spoken for an hour. That's not true here. You're in our faculty offices all the time working on amazing things because they love to have you work on amazing things. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that we're community focused, not elite focused. This isn't all about me. This is about our students. And that's very different at a school. We want to be focused on somebody other than ourselves. And that changes our culture, and it changes how we engage people. But it also means that we prepare our students to go to these kinds of places, the best. The best places in the country in the government, the best places in the country in industry. And you can see that in how they get paid here. Michigan, we're the #1 school in Michigan in terms of the amount of starting salary a student will get if you divide it by the tuition that he spent to get it, which means we're the most cost-effective school in Michigan. So regardless of what it costs, the fact is that if you leverage on top of that the salary you get paid, you do better here than you will at anywhere other school in Michigan. We're also in the top 100 nationally. So there are thousands of colleges and universities that you can go to that you can get a bachelor's degree. But we're in the top 100 in terms of the effectiveness of that bachelor's degree. Is that bachelor's degree going to get you the kind of top salary that you really want? And most of us want. You know, mom and dad have a very few objectives for you young people. One is they want you to graduate. Two, they want you to get a job that pays well. And three, they do not want you to come home. So if you keep that in mind, whether it's here or somebody else, you want to keep those three goals in mind. And that means that when you graduate, you want to be getting paid enough. Look, all of my children are classically trained musicians, started when they were 4 years old. Not a one of them is a musician today. They're all lawyers and doctors and wizards of some kind or another. Now, by the way, that is not to be a criticism of music, so I'm going to make a little lobby for music. Music is one of the best things you can study to prepare for the sciences. It develops your brain. So starting violin when you're 4 years old is one of the best things your mother could do for you. And many software engineers are excellent musicians. This is the kind of this is the most common salary that you hear from our graduates 5 years after graduation. If you ask them, what are you getting paid? The most common number they'll come back with is $90,000 a year. 95% are employed full-time. Some of them are in grad school. Most of our students are actually employed as juniors and seniors. That's a little dangerous because a lot of times students don't finish when they get a great job that's paying well. And my son, one of my sons, we've had a very difficult time getting him not only to finish college, to get him into college. He went to Harvard at night in high school, and he started a couple high-tech companies in high school. So by the time he was 19, he didn't think he needed college. And he went to New York City to interview for some high-end technical job from William Buckley, the famous William Buckley in the media business. And they thought he graduated from high school because he had Harvard on his resume. They didn't realize he was a high school student. But we encourage our students to finish. Doesn't mean you have to, but we encourage you to finish. We want you to finish. Because you don't know what your life's going to be like at the end of 10 or 15 years from now. So most of our students, in fact, are employed. We encourage them to stay around to finish up and then move on full-time with their careers. So how did I do? I'm on a budget. Okay. So it's not noon yet, so I declare success. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I'll be coming over to the lunch there if you want to chat a little bit one-on-one. I'm going to leave some business cards right up here on the corner. And so if you'd like to come back to campus and just visit with me personally, or you happen to be driving by and say, I'm going to go in there and say hello, just send me an email or call, and we'll set you up an appointment. You can come to my office, okay? Thank you for coming today.